Is China the best country in Asia, or in fact the world, to travel to right now? I know that's a massive question. It's going to take some serious unpicking. We're going to do that throughout the course of this video. This one being the last one of the whole trip. I've been in China for a month. I've covered 8,000 miles since landing in Shanghai. I've not even left the country, and I am now coming to you from Nanjing. Stop 12 of 12, video 12 of 12, and we've got some discussions to have. As you can imagine, there are a lot of different angles to a question like that. You might already be thinking, Lewis, it is not even possible to answer that question. Well, I think it is, and I don't think it's all that complicated, but we'll go through it gradually as we mix it in with a bit of sightseeing of Nanjing, the last stop, the last one. So we are now back on the east coast, very close to Shanghai where it all started, and soon will be ending. I'm flying back from Shanghai, and you'll see by looking at this map the route we've taken to go all the way to the far corners of China and back again. It's taken us through 4 provinces plus Chongqing and Shanghai, which don't have a province that they belong to. I'll go through the trip in a bit more detail later on. I'll have to make some of the points that I need to make about the country, but for now, Nanjing, the former capital of China. The name means southern capital, Nan being south, to differentiate it from Beijing, the northern capital, back when the Ming dynasty for a couple of hundred years ruled from 2 different capital cities, north and south, and that's where it got its name from. I believe it has actually been the capital of a unified China twice, as well as capital of 7 different kingdoms. I do love all of these waterways woven into the cities in China. We've seen quite a few of these. We've seen quite a range of places, but I do really like this kind of setting. It looks really, really old. Actually, I think the diversity point is a good place to start, because for me it's an absolute slam dunk. But before we start making any of these comparisons, I think it's worth clarifying a couple of points. Firstly, while there are objective things you can compare, like infrastructure, cost, climate, language, cleanliness, just for a few examples, there are a few things that are of course purely subjective, how a place feels and things like that. But the second point of this is I've been fortunate that I've traveled to a lot of Asia. I think 20 or 25 countries in the region, almost everything that's within a few thousand miles of China. And I don't mean that to sound like a knob, I just mean that I've had a whole range of experiences in this part of the world that hopefully I can use to draw some decent conclusions about the subjective aspects. So back to the point, diversity, at least in terms of landscapes, has to be an easy win for China, with the big shiny skyscrapers, the deserts, the mountains, the cities like this, all the water towns in the country, plus all the stuff we haven't seen, like the Tibetan Plateau, the Gobi Desert, all that kind of area has to be number one, surely. And for the record, I mean number one globally. We had this kind of setting in Lijiang, all the nice mountains, the snow-capped areas in front of gorgeous lakes, and then went up to Urumqi and Xinjiang, which had a completely different landscape. It was a really like dusty, old Silk Road type vibe. Then Chongqing, which was just mental. I know this is mostly man-made, but it's man-made on a mountain. The topography of that place was hectic. Leshan with the giant Buddha and the caves were sensational. Then there was a bunch of different old towns on the way in various parts of the country, and then you come to the east coast where everything is big, fancy and shiny. Lovely park, by the way. This is Egret Island Park in Nanjing. So let's talk about infrastructure, and this one's not a straight win for me. And by infrastructure I mean getting places and buying things and doing stuff. Like, I think it is the best in the world. Objectively, I think efficiency wise, the ease of use for everything, how clearly stuff is signposted in airports, trains, how easy it is to buy tickets, the quality of the train service, the flights, the airports, everything about it is by far number one from what I've experienced. But it's not as simple as that. To demonstrate what I mean, let's go to the trip map again. So here's what it looks like. I think in here it's 4 flights, 8 train journeys. It's 8,000 miles, all around China and back again. But I managed to do all of this without having to speak to a single human being. So all of the apps are brilliant, they're really easy to use, the payment options, everything is digital. Objectively, nothing could be better with the infrastructure in China. It's clean, it's on time to the second, it's high quality, it's modern, everything, it's brilliant, right? But the fact that it's digital removes any kind of need to interact with anybody. And even when you do need to interact with people, you just use the translate apps. So I've learned a bit of Chinese because I wanted to, but you could easily get by without it, which is a good thing. It makes it convenient. But I don't know, that you lose a little bit of that interaction with the people that usually you have to get by, or at least chatting to people while you're buying a ticket. There's not even a ticket, it's all tied to your passport or a QR code. So absolutely brilliant in every possible way, but not my favourite. It's a bit too good, actually. It's a bit too good if you think about it. That is defo just personal preference, and if you're travelling with a partner or mates or kids, then you're going to be glad to have that convenience. It is very, very easy. I just kind of miss the dustier parts of the world, I suppose. I'm not normally in this kind of ultra modern environment, so it's a bit sterile. Maybe that's the word for me, but that's just personal preference. That over there, past all these mopeds, is part of the ancient wall of Nanjing. I believe that was built in the 1400s. And lastly, on this topic, just because I love numbers, as you may or may not know, China has 15 times more high-speed rail laid and in use than Japan, which is what you normally think about when you think of the bullet trains and good train systems. It has enough, in fact, to go around the world entirely, and then with what's left over, it's still more than what the rest of the world has put together. That's how far ahead of everyone it is in terms of rail transport. What it means is you can get anywhere you want as quickly as is humanly possible as a traveller. It's really easy, there's no queuing, there's no bargaining, there's no language barrier involved, it's dead easy. This area now is Laomendong and is another of the super traditional, old-fashioned Han-style towns that we've seen all over China. This kind of area is brilliant for people watching. There's loads of people that get dressed up in traditional gowns and things, just have photos taken. It's really, really cool. It's a bit like they do in, like I've seen in South Korea, for example, in the Hanbok at all the palaces. It's a bit like that. Really, really cool. These things are incredibly annoying though. People are selling these things everywhere and they are doing my head in. Here we have the old city wall. 600 years this has been here for. Originally, this would have covered about 22 miles in length. It's now about 13 miles in length, but originally it was the longest city wall in the world, and this city itself was the biggest city in the world at the time. And here it is, still here. They used pretty big bricks in all this. They reckon there are 350 million of these bricks in this construction. History-wise, it's no secret that China is one of the top places globally. I guess it's always been such a powerhouse for so many years, and it won a lot of its battles, so it kept a lot of its old stuff, and the stuff it's had to rebuild, it does so in like a tasteful way. So it means wherever you go, you get old stuff, very old stuff, or quite new stuff that represents how it would have looked if it was still standing. So loads of cool old areas wherever you go. I also really like the community aspects you see here. It's not unique to China, that's not my point. I'm just saying I like walking through the parks that are everywhere in every major city. You see everyone playing cards like this or dancing like we saw in a few other places. Urumqi was a really good example of everyone having a good time. There was the big dance session happening, there was the ping pong tournament, the gym, everything was going on over there. Another important measure, I think, for travellers is cleanliness, and I've got to say, in the month that I've been here, I don't know if I've seen any rubbish on the floor whatsoever. There's loads of people sweeping up all the time. Everything has been pristine, everywhere, all the time. There's also no need for concern regarding pollution, which surprised me, because every city I've been to, not been to everywhere, but been to quite a variety of places, the air quality has been rated excellent everywhere. So that's not a concern. And another triumph is the availability of public toilets everywhere. They do often have European style toilets sometimes. I mean, if they don't, just go to a disabled one, an accessible one, but they're everywhere and free to use, and it's a brilliant thing for travellers. If you've been to India, then, well, actually I've got to be careful, because if I start comparing China to India, we're going to be here all day. But even if you've seen a picture or some footage of India, then you'll see what it can look like with a country of 1.5 billion people, trying to keep everything in order, trying to keep it all clean, presentable and organised, and instead it just looks like this. It's no easy feat to do that. One of the slightly controversial topics that concerns some people looking at coming to China is the surveillance and the privacy or lack thereof. Here is an example of what that means. So at this one crossroads, I think I can see 18 surveillance cameras. On our left, there are 3 there. Up here there are 5 more, so we're up to 8 already. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 up there, 17, 18. I might have even missed some. And I can assure you that theme continues everywhere, in every town or city, in every part of China. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else in the world. That physical surveillance, along with using your passport as a ticket, for example, or using payment apps for everything, or using ticketing apps for everything, means every single thing you do is tracked. There are some people I know that do not like that idea, so it's just a heads up. And we are walking into the Confucius Temple area of the city just in time for everything lighting up for one last night market. The area is named after the Confucius Temple, which is in the middle. It's dedicated to the ancient philosopher. Can't actually go in, and it's a good time to highlight one of the other issues with the infrastructure. Everything being paid for and everything you do anywhere through your phone. If your phone dies or loses signal, you can't do a lot about it. It doesn't work like Apple Pay, for example, where it works offline. If you lose signal, like I just have temporarily, you're not getting a lot done. I want to return to the surveillance subject again briefly, because there's something important I missed out, that despite all that surveillance, or in fact because of all the surveillance, the Chinese people, as far as I have investigated, all seem pretty happy about it. Like, they feel incredibly secure. They don't feel imposed on unless they're doing something wrong. The crime levels are really low because they know they're going to get caught instantly if they do anything. So honestly, at least as far as I've read, it's actually a pretty good thing. It's well received that everyone is so well monitored, because it means that if something goes wrong or there's a bad guy on the loose, they're going to get him. For the record, I am well aware that that angle is not what the West or most of the world would take on the situation. I know it's not that common to think, well, I'm doing nothing wrong, why should I be concerned? But I just wanted to add in that bit of context. People here seem pretty happy about it. I've ended up with a bag of this, well, whatever it was. Where did we have it? In Chengdu? This kind of cheesecake type thing. It is phenomenal. It's so light as like a dessert thing, a bit of fruit in there. Anyway, I've ended up with a whole bag of it to take home. I'm not sure what I've ended up with here. It looks like fruit on a stick doused in sugar. That is exactly what it is. It's like a toffee apple, but more varied. This bad boy was Arshiu Kwai, 25, £2.50. Is it good for me? Does it balance out? I think we're at a net zero there. Probably a bit of diabetes and a few vitamins all rolled in together, so probably not too bad. That one I just had was a tomato. It looked a bit like a little tomato, but I didn't believe it. I suppose it is technically a fruit, but that does not belong in between a grape and a segment of an orange. So as I'm sat watching boats go down the river in the former capital of the country, there is one more measurement to consider. And that is cost. It doesn't matter how good somewhere is if you can't afford to actually go to it. And this is actually a really complicated thing to compare because not everywhere has the same system, the same accommodation types, everything. Suffice it to say that China is one of, if not the cheapest country I have ever been to, anywhere in the world. I think it's possibly the cheapest. Public transport in any city, even the big ones, cost between 20 and 60p, no matter how many buses or trains I've had to get. I've never paid more than that. The accommodation situation in China is absolutely daft. Here's an example of where I stayed in Chengdu. It was like a 2-floor apartment thing overlooking the city. Very fancy. 13 quid per night. That's it. Another example was in Shuhe at the start of the trip. This was in a really nice, quaint, ancient looking courtyard type building, really good facilities. That was 12 quid a night. And here is where I'm staying in Nanjing, big spacious room, normal kind of hotel. That, including breakfast, is a dizzying £16 per night. My average over the whole trip, over the whole 3 and a bit weeks since Shanghai, is about 12 quid a night. And I've not had that anywhere, not for a private room, double bed, all the normal facilities. Nothing like that anywhere else in the world. And the cost topic could go on all day, but if you go back through some of the videos I've posted on the trip, you'll get a good idea that this really is a very, very, very cheap country to travel in. And finally, if you'll humour me for one more minute, I just want to demonstrate my findings with an exercise, and hopefully it's all going to make sense at the end. So what I want to do is compare a few of the Chinese destinations I've been with other places that I've been in Asia before. So first up, Lijiang. As soon as I landed here with all the water in the towns and all the traditional kind of buildings, it felt like Hoi An in Vietnam, and then with the lake and the mountains in the background, it looked a bit like Pokhara in Nepal. Shangri-La had a really strong Nepalese vibe as well because of the Buddhism and the Tibetans, but also a bit of Thailand mixed in there as well with the temples. Blue Moon Valley with the fluorescent bright blue water, the giant mountains in the background, the landscape was stunning. That reminded me of Kyrgyzstan. Urumqi in Xinjiang felt a lot like Uzbekistan. Kashgar, the old streets there, felt a lot like the old parts of Syria. Lashan gave strong Sri Lanka and I guess a little bit Indonesia vibes as well, really jungly. Chongqing was just an optical illusion, so there's nowhere in the world like that. That place was ridiculous. Pretty much all of the night markets and the lit up modern cities at night, as well as the puddings available in the street food options and the traditional dress up, very, very South Korean. All of the transport and its efficiency, very Japanese, and the cost, it was like Nepal, Vietnam, Philippines, very, very, very low cost. Hopefully then you're starting to see my point. I think it is absolutely daft that China can be considered just one country. There's so much happening everywhere all the time. There's such a variety of things to look at, to see, to do. It's easy to plan, it's easy to navigate, it's cost effective. It's not perfect, but then I don't think anywhere really is. Overall, it's a fascinating mix of pretty much all of the best bits of the best countries in Asia. If you had to visit one country, not leave the border, and have a brilliant time and see whatever it is you wanted to see in Asia, then yeah, I think this might be the best place for you to go. And so I reckon that's about that from me. I've loved doing this one. Cheers for joining me. I always treat these like it could be my last ever group of videos. Maybe it is. Anyway, if it is, I've had a good run. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate your company. Cheers chaps. See you in a bit.